welcome to this PyQ webinar. This is the 6th in our series of Intelligence for the Future. And I'm Alison Jones. I'm Director of Practical Inspiration Publishing, host of the Extraordinary Business Book Club. It's very, very good to have you here. And as you know, if you've been to the previous ones, the aim of these webinars is to explore how work is changing in these extraordinary times, and also give us the insights and the strategies and the skills to help navigate that transformation better. So if you have a particular topic that you would like us to cover, or also any feedback on how we can make these sessions even more useful, I'd love to hear from you. Just drop me a line, alison@alisonjones.com. And let me introduce today's speaker. So Andy Salkeld is a Big Four trained chartered accountant. He specialised in a very complex and arcane field of corporate finance before moving into the private sector to focus on business intelligence and analytics. And Andy has also knowingly lived with depression for most of his life, and at his lowest point came within moments of taking his own life. And he now advocates positive action around mental health, working closely with business leaders across the UK, delivering talks and workshops and coaching across their offices as they strive to build mentally healthy cultures. He's also the author of Life is a Four-Letter Word, which is out tomorrow, 14th of May, from Practical Inspiration Publishing. So welcome, Andy.
Thank you.
Fantastic to have you. Congratulations for tomorrow.
Yep, I'm still in shock by it.
So let's talk about mental health. We could talk about the book forever, but I'm not going to. Let's talk about mental health. We're talking about it now in terms of how people are responding to the coronavirus crisis. It's probably more open than it's been for a while, which has got to be a good thing. You know, how do you think that the current situation is impacting on people's mental health?
So, I mean, one of the biggest things I've always said is there's always been this sort of crisis coming at some point or another, because people are working longer, harder, faster, whatever descriptor you want to use. We're doing more work and having less time, particularly in a corporate environment. And there's almost an expectation to want more, as I always describe it as. And what's happened now is not only has our world changed around us, and there's the uncertainty in that. No one really knows what's going on or all of that. The communication's bad enough as it is. But people are now not only adapting to working and living differently, but they're also spending a lot more time with themselves. And what's happening is, in that change and through the kind of conversations they're having with themselves day in, day out, they're actually finding that they probably weren't as happy as they thought they were when they had a life of distractions that was going on. And suddenly this is very real and very present. And what I feel is, like, I wish it hadn't happened this way, but I'm so glad that these conversations are happening and it is becoming more and more relevant to everyone, because it doesn't take much to have a conversation with yourself and understand what you're enjoying, what you want from life, and to think about it. And now that we've all been given this pause for thought, it's such an opportunity. And I think businesses and people alike are all looking for how they can build something better going forward for everyone involved.
And it's interesting, actually, that the day we're speaking, which is the 13th of May, Twitter have just announced that anybody who wants to work from home can work from home in the future. So there's a real signal that work culture is changing.
Exactly. And like, I know, like, the risk of all this, and there is risk. The risk is that we try to rush back to what was, and that businesses try to clamber back for what their revenue targets were, what their EBITDA was, and whatever metrics they had, where actually this is kind of a reset button in a way for lives, people, businesses to actually build something more constructive. And I think what Twitter are doing in announcing that is actually brilliant, because for a long time, businesses have kind of developed these footprints where they hold their people in a way. And we've built cities upwards because of them, and slowly taken away green space and things like that were part of our city centres at one point. And now people are suddenly realising that, oh wait, yeah, we don't actually need that. Now that we've dealt with the practical side of how do we do it, they're realizing, well, actually, we don't need a 6-story office block to host people. Maybe we can go down to 3 stories and have flexible working elsewhere and so on. And I think that is brilliant, and that is the way kind of businesses will shape themselves going forward. And it will hopefully lead to leaner and kind of more efficient business, but also leaner and more kind of environmentally friendly businesses as well, because they don't need the huge footprints. They don't need like all the people commuting in every day and all of that. And slowly but surely people will be able to claim the commute time or bits of their time back, and it will hopefully lead to a much happier place overall.
That's a really optimistic view of it. I hope you're right. I think one thing that's interesting now, and I can't remember exactly where I heard this first, but that thing, we're all in this together. We're clearly, yes, we are all in this together in one way, but we're all in very different boats, aren't we?
Yeah, that was me.
It was you, was it? Oh, I loved that.
We're all in the same storm, but we're in different boats. Don't say we're in the same boat, because we're not. Everyone is living their own experience through this, but we are all in the same storm that's going on around us. And sometimes you can help other people, but you're still in your own boat and so on. And that's how I've been describing it.
I think that's such a helpful picture, but it also means that every announcement like that will mean different things to different people. So there will be some people who can't wait to get back to the office and get back to normality. There are other people who it's so much better for them, for their well-being, to be based at home. So that is going to be challenging in the future, isn't it?
Yeah. So I've been speaking to a lot of friends and a lot of businesses during this time, and a lot of my friends have been saying, well, actually, I work just as effectively here as in the office, but I don't have my hour-long commute every day. So this is actually better for me. Others, like I was on the phone with professional practice yesterday, and they were like, well, one of the key things that a location, an office brings is that social interaction. But when you're forced to sit 2 meters apart and you can't go to communal areas and stuff like that, it's not going to be going back to that way for a long time anyway, because those social bits aren't going to be there. And what I've been saying to a lot of people is like, look, we can't make change now, but we can at least understand what we want change to be in the future. So if we enjoy this way of life, if we like this way of life, then try to hold on to it when we go back or whatever. If you don't, that's fine as well. Like, every person is entitled to their own happiness in life. And one of the biggest risks right now, and it's something I'll be covering in a talk I'm giving next week called The Net Present Value of Happiness, is that there is a risk right now where a lot of people are saying, I'll be happy when I can, when I'm back in the office and social. I'll be happy when I can see my family, when I can see my friends. I mean, heck, I'm saying it, and I don't believe in it, if you know what I mean, because one of the important things is, as sad as it sounds, some of those things may not happen. And it's about finding happiness in the present and where we are, and becoming comfortable in whatever life is, not what it isn't, and so on. And so I've been trying to help people through kind of going through a lot of the thought processes I went through at the very beginning of this, and so on.
And that leads me beautifully actually to the next thing I was going to ask you about, which is we've got two conversations. Well, we've got lots of conversations, but there's two types of conversations going on. We've got our own conversation with ourselves, in a sense, and the conversations that we have individually. But we've also got corporate conversations. We've got corporate conversations, and we've touched on both about what we want the future of work to be. So if we take those in turn, I guess we've got three there. The one you have with yourself, which of course you demonstrate beautifully in your book with your
well,
very harsh but very funny. The second one is the conversations we have with each other. So let's sort of start with us. What can we as individuals, apart from any external help, in a sense, what can we do to best protect our own mental health right now?
So I mean there's a lot that could be said. There's a lot of practical things that get said time and time again, like have your borders and boundaries, set up your workspace, keep your work and your home life different, even when they're the same. And there's all those kind of practical things that get said time and time again. Like, but the biggest thing I've been saying to people is stop worrying about what you can't do. Don't worry about the can't, because there's a lot that we can't do, but there's so much that we can do as well. And whether that's approximating through kind of using Zoom, Skype, whatever it is, to have after work drinks, or cook meals together, something like that. That's great. You can still do a lot of those things. And one of the other biggest parts that I talk about throughout Life is a Four-Letter Word, and just in everything I say, is being accepting of yourself and being accepting of what matters to you, because a lot of that gets distracted and gets kind of left beneath the surface when we're so busy, when we're kind of running around day to day doing all these things. Now is the time to listen. Now is the time to kind of think about what matters to you. I mean, I know personally that I've learned through this that actually I really do like social interaction. I talk about being kind of a balanced introvert extrovert, but I've really learned that I do need other people to feel rested. I haven't felt rested throughout this because I haven't been seeing people. And I know that when I am unable to do that, when the world allows it, that I'm going to look forward to being with people. But I also need to find happiness in the present, as I was saying before, where you need to know what you can do now to bring happiness. Because it's easy to say, oh, well, I can't do this, can't do that, I can't travel, all these things you can't do. So stop worrying about them, because all you're doing is distracting from what you could be doing that could make you happy, and so on.
And that conversation with yourself, which, as I say, you dramatize really well in the book, how did you learn to manage that? How, in a sense, you've dissociated part of yourself.
The very long and hard way, which is kind of having an internal like, I don't like using combative language at all, but it very much was an internal battle for a long time. And the way I managed that is I really relied on my therapist and my counselor and all that I see weekly pretty much. And like it's a mediative tool between what you're feeling and how you're acting, in a way. And I have suffered with kind of body confidence issues, with just general confidence issues, with kind of feeling inferior, all this sort of stuff. And through having a conversation with my counselor, with my therapist, that enabled me to have the conversation with myself as to why I didn't feel this way. And this is one of the hardest bits most people find, is it's not about the what you're feeling or how you're feeling it, it's why. And if you can get down to the why, then you can actually start making real positive change. And it's not an easy journey. I mean, when people read Life is a Four-Letter Word and they actually meet my inner critic, affectionately called Indy, it very much is, you see just how like at odds we are throughout most of it. But there is one particular point in it, which is the point of my almost end, my suicide, where we actually both say exactly the same thing. And that was really designed to kind of say, look, in all of this, you can have as much conflict in you as anyone. Like, you see my conflict throughout it, but there are moments when there is absolute clarity and certainty, and it's finding those and finding why and so on. And as people are out there now having these conversations with themselves, being like, well, actually, this is how I want to work. So I don't want to go back to the office. I don't want to lose the commute. Or I don't want the commute. I don't want to lose the time. Now is the time when you can start thinking about that and start thinking about, well, if I don't like it, I should look for places that I do like or that do matter. If I'm really missing my family, maybe I should move closer to them, or like one of the things I've been toying with is I miss education. I miss learning. I love learning. And what this has taught me is maybe I need to start learning again and start doing something that I really enjoy.
I love that.
And having those conversations with yourself is so hard, but it is so rewarding when you get there. And sometimes it's like, and all it is about knowing that actually it's okay to have these conversations with yourself a lot of the time, because sometimes we call ourselves crazy. It's like, why am I saying this to myself? Why am I having this conversation? But you know, most of us do it. And that's kind of why I put my Tyler Durden out there to say, look, here's a conversation I'm having, and I'm fairly certain, and I'm really, really hopeful that other people are having them too.
And you've made yourself really vulnerable there, and I think that's the really powerful thing, is that because people can suddenly resonate with that, they're like, oh, I thought it was just me. So
Yeah.
really powerful firstly about having the conversation with yourself, not being scared to do that and recognizing that we're all doing it. Secondly, using other people, reaching out for help, using counselors and so on is really, really important. Focusing on what you can do clearly rather than what you can't. But how do we reach out to other people and support them? Because it may well be that we recognize other people are struggling.
The most important thing that any business can do is to build trust in this. And I was speaking to a counsellor, a counselling company that's just starting up down in London. And they were like, we've been thinking of doing some schemes for corporates and how we could help corporates. And I was like, the biggest issue you're going to have is overcoming the trust, because anyone that signs up to one of these things is going to believe that what can be said is reported back to management, even if it isn't. And overcoming that trust is incredible. Overcoming that hurdle is one of the biggest things most companies will struggle with in this. And if you can find a way to do that, then you can find a way to help everyone. What I've been saying is, look, don't worry about the businesses. If you think about your goal is to help people. And you can help people without going through a business. The business is just your conduit to a population of people to help. So focus on helping the people and try to maintain that distance from the corporates and so on, because that's where distrust is built. I've seen great examples where they have worked, but again, it's overcoming that hurdle that is kind of the biggest struggle in creating mentally healthy cultures within an organization through counseling and stuff like that.
And Andy, if you were going to come down back in the room, sorry, if you're
That's
going
great.
if you're going to come down from the big sort of PwC type level to smaller organizations where you have smaller teams where confidentiality is a massive issue because everybody knows everybody and you haven't got the anonymity of a big organization, what are the most effective ways that small companies can support their staff in terms of mental health, do you think?
I mean, the absolute biggest thing, and it doesn't matter of size of organization, is having those open conversations from the person at the top to every other level in the organization, because the more that happens behind closed doors, the less trust is built throughout people. And one of the things I never felt was that people cared about who I was and they cared about what I was doing and what my results were and everything like that, but not about the individual. And I've seen great small businesses that are just kind of like, well, yeah, every week I get to sit down with the person at the top. It may just be a coffee for 15 minutes to be like, hey, how's it going? But they're showing an actual interest in me. And building that throughout an organization is one of the best ways to build happiness and a mentally healthy culture. Like all of us, whoever we are, whatever organization we're in, we love, or we as humans crave acceptance and crave kind of, am I a part of this or not? And when you're not having those conversations with people throughout the organization, then you don't feel a part of it, and you feel you're just a worker rather than a person, and so on. And it's a lot easier in smaller business, a lot easier, because I can speak to the people who work for me easily, because there's me and there's them, and I just sit down and we chat, or something like that. And the bigger a business gets, the harder it is, and the more layers of middle management and middle tiers there are, where it's kind of like, well, I don't have time to focus on this, so I delegate, and then they delegate, and then they delegate, and it becomes detached. So I think the single biggest thing that anyone can do is just have open conversations, just honest conversations, everything like that, because that is where it all starts. But it's giving people the confidence to have that, and that's where showing and embracing your own vulnerabilities can give them the confidence to say, well, you know what, I'm struggling, I'm finding it hard. And it's breeding that culture throughout.
It comes back to trust again, isn't it?
Yeah, and just people talking to people honestly. And yeah, a lot of that does come down to trust. Do I trust you enough to tell you, this is how I feel, this is what I think, this is what I want, and how afraid am I of any repercussions from that, and so on. If I tell you I'm not happy or that I'm struggling, am I railroaded? Is that the death knell of my career? Is that where opportunities stop? Am I going to be moved out because I'm not wanting to move onwards and upwards and all of that?
Which is why your talk is called Breaking the Stigma, isn't it? It's that sense that if I talk about this, I'm immediately stigmatized.
Yeah, and that it very much is. Like, I never felt, I felt whilst I worked in large practice and large businesses, that if I said, you know what, I live with depression, I am struggling with this, my anxiety is on high, I'm failing in the metrics you are measuring, but you're not understanding the cause of it. If I say this, am I ostracized? Because one of the things within these cultures, particularly in professional practice, is you are rated against your peers, your promotion prospects, your opportunities to advance, and everything like that is directly graded against everyone else. And therefore it is a competition, whether people want it, whether they say it's a competition or not, it is a competition. Am I going to get this opportunity, or are you going to get this opportunity, and so on. And that's where the struggle comes down. That stigma there is what I've been doing everything I can to say, no, we have overcome so many in our world, like race, belief, color of skin, all of that. And mental health is no different. Struggling is no different. And it's just about enabling people to say, you know what, it's okay to say that. It's okay to just be like, you know what, I'm happy where I am. I need to feel more comfortable where I am before I move forward. But when you're constantly in the grinder, where it's like, right, well, we're promoting 3 people this year from this grade to this grade, and there's 10 of you, which one gets it, and so on. And you're like, oh, okay, I guess I have to compete, but sometimes you don't want to. Sometimes you've got other things that are far more important in life happening.
The thing about vulnerability is interesting as well, because I think it has, Brene Brown's work here obviously is the standout stuff that's brought it into the mainstream. But her point about the research she's done with managers saying that the people that they trust least are the people who won't ask for help. I think it's really interesting. And we're starting perhaps to see vulnerability asking questions, not being afraid to show that you don't know the answers, all that kind of thing, as actual positive attributes in business rather than weakness, which has got to be good for all of us.
Yeah, I mean, I used to be afraid to say I don't know, whereas actually now I'm just like, I don't know. That is not something I'm an expert in, but I can find someone who is. You know what I mean? It's not a weakness in you. Each person is a specialist in something or a generalist in all things, but no one person can hold all the answers. So we all actually do need each other in some regard.
And of course, most of the answers for the questions that we're facing at the moment aren't out there anyway. We're all discovering it all for the first time. So starting off anywhere other than I don't know right now is lying to yourself, isn't it?
Yeah, precisely. And what I've tried to do in a lot of what I said is just give people confidence to say, you know what, I'm not the only one feeling this. I'm not the only one struggling with it. I'm not the only one that has these insecurities inside of me or anything like that. We're all just equal at the end of the day.
Well, that seems a great place to just pause for a minute. Thank you, Andy. And just turn to Q&A. So fantastic. Thank you so much, Andy. And I know Julia was just saying there, thank you so much for your openness. Ken's saying really open talk. Thank you. And that's what it's all about, isn't it? It's about allowing us and empowering us and giving us a bit of inspiration to have those conversations, which make all the difference. Thank you so much. Andy's book is out tomorrow, as I say. The Kindle edition is 99p until tomorrow. So I can't imagine you wouldn't want to read it after this, but so if you grab it before the price goes up to normal today or tomorrow, then that'd be a really sensible thing to do. So thank you, Andy. Really, really important and interesting conversation.
Yeah, and all I've ever hoped from this is that people don't feel they're alone in it. People don't feel that they're struggling by themselves as I did, and that if through reading it you feel more inclined to have a conversation, do so, because often if you ever reach the point of thinking, I should probably speak to someone about this, you almost certainly should have done.
I want to go back into your story now and tell them actually it was somebody reaching out to you that changed everything for the better. So yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. Right, a few final words from me before we wrap up. I had originally planned to run the PyQ webinars just sort of for about 6 weeks or so as kind of emergency first aid, as we all kind of got locked down and we faced up to crisis in our business. And it feels as though the first phase of the crisis is sort of over. We're moving into a second phase of the crisis here in the UK. We're starting to emerge from lockdown. But it is also very clear that this is going to be a very long process. These conversations are going to carry on happening for a long time. So I'm going to continue with the webinars. We've had such positive feedback, but I'm going to move them to a monthly rather than a weekly schedule. Julie's saying, yeah. And we're going to focus on the kind of the bigger picture of how work is changing and how we can adapt and thrive for the long term. So I mean, issues like today, very much the sort of things we want to be focusing on. So no webinar next week, but please do join me on the 10th of June when I'm going to be talking to Kelly Lucas, who's the author of The Customer Success Pioneer. The working title is Customer Success, a Matter of Business, Life or Death. Because I think one thing we have learned over the last few weeks is that our success, our viability as businesses, is inextricably tied up with our customers' success and their viability as businesses. And if we are all going to build resilient businesses, then we all need to learn from the big companies how to make that strategic focus on customer success, not just customer service, part of our DNA, whatever our size is. And if you'd like to explore becoming a practical inspiration author like Kelly or Andy, I would love to hear from you too. We are very, very proud to be publishing partners with people like them, leaders in a very wide range of fields, and you can find out more about us at practicalinspiration.com. And that really is it for today. Thank you very much for joining us, everybody. Thank you, Andy, on behalf of everybody here, and I hope to see you all back in June for another PyQ webinar. Goodbye.
Bye.